Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. This happens to be the full moon day of May, even though in the Thai calendar the Wesak day was actually yesterday, the 17th. The full moon is occurred just about a couple of hours ago, just at 5:30. So this is actually the full moon night of May, and that full moon night of May was the night on which the Lord Buddha was born, and the night he sat under the Bodhi tree and became fully enlightened, became an Arahat. It's also the time when he passed away into Parinibbana. There's 5 khandhas just disappeared. The samsara was stopped. And so tonight is a very auspicious night. It's the night when we can recollect on those occasions, and recollecting on such occasions is something which we can do to inspire our mind, to bring happiness, to bring joy. And there's that sequence showing the nature of the mind, the cause and effect sequence of the mind, that when the mind becomes inspired, piti arises, and from piti the body and mind become tranquil, and from bodily and mental tranquility, citta and kaya passaddhi, the happiness comes in the mind. From that we get samadhi, and from that we get seeing things as they truly are, and that we get release from the world. This is a natural process, as I've taught many times. Nothing to do with you. It's just what happens when the mind becomes inspired on the Dhamma. And this is a marvelous occasion to inspire that mind, just with the example of a Buddha sitting under a Bodhi tree. And it's fascinating to see that story of what the Buddha actually did in order to glean from the example of the Buddha's own enlightenment, just the way for our enlightenment. And you can see that the Buddha gave up the austere practices, those which created too much pain in his body. And even though that's so clear a teaching of the Buddha, it was actually the very first teaching which the Buddha gave, even before the Four Noble Truths, was the middle way, which avoids the 2 extremes. And the second of those extremes was the extreme of torturing the body. And this is where that we really need to remember that pushing the body too far, with too much willpower, with too much control, just creates a tightness in the body, the tightness in the mind. It doesn't bring the joy. It doesn't start that sequence which I just mentioned, but actually hinders it. In the same way, just indulging in the pleasures of the world, indulging in sights, sounds, smells, tastes and touches, also doesn't even give you kaya passaddhi and citta passaddhi. It doesn't even give you the tranquility of the body, or the tranquility of the mind. But indulging in the pleasures of the senses just stirs you up bodily and mentally. It's important to, at the very least, even as a person visiting this monastery, or a person taking 8 precepts, and certainly for novices, absolutely for monks, you should have that degree of mindfulness and that degree of intelligence, just to know the results of what you do, and to see what happens if you indulge and break precepts, do what's not appropriate for a monk. If you indulge the mind, if you indulge the body, So what does it do? It just brings suffering. But if you discipline the body and discipline the mind and keep this beautiful middle way, which is a very delightful and easy way, you, instead of getting this suffering of remorse, this suffering of a very heavy and restless body, you get the kaya passaddhi, the tranquility, the lightness of the body, and especially the lightness of the mind. So many people just feel that heaviness, that weariness in their body, that heaviness and the weariness in their mind. And it's such a common experience when someone hears a very beautiful Dhamma discourse, or they have a wonderful meditation, or they come and visit a beautiful temple on the full moon night of Wesak. They get inspiration. And that inspiration just gives them the feeling of lightness in the body. So often people have the feeling they're just floating. Even though they haven't raised above the ground, just the body is so light. In other words, that all its irritations, aches and pains and disturbances seem to get allayed through that inspiration of leading a moral, a restrained, peaceful lifestyle. So your degree of mindfulness and reflection, which looks back upon what you did and what results it gave you, should be that which teaches you what the path should be, what you should do with your life. And all the happiness and suffering in the world, it's up to you to choose which one you want. And you're just stupid if you choose the way of suffering, especially as a monk who's got this beautiful opportunity in a monastery such as this to practice the Vinaya. In some places it's so difficult to keep the rules of discipline. Just the situation just makes it difficult. There's not the support, there's not the friendship, there's not the encouragement. In a monastery such as this, I think anywhere, there is the friendship, there is the support, there is the encouragement to keep your rules, as they say in the Vinaya, as pure as bright as a polished conch shell. Not as dirty and oily as an old rag, but as beautiful as a polished conch shell. And if you do that, that does give you happiness. And this is really what we're after in our life. And it also gives you that inspiration, that feeling of lightness in the body. And the more that you listen to the beautiful Dhamma, the more that you reflect on the Buddha's teachings, the more that you bow to a Buddha, you chant, you do all these beautiful ceremonies, the more that you give to the monastery by helping establish places where people can meditate. It gives you just so much inspiration and happiness. It's a weird thing that sometimes when I work so hard, the body should feel heavy because of all of the energy which I've expended. But so often it feels light, simply because of the happiness which that brings. And this is just the way I always reflect, as I was saying after the Patimokkha. Whenever I do a service for the Sangha, whether it's moving some bricks, or whether it's giving a talk, or whether it's just doing some chanting at a ceremony, it does actually bring me so much happiness. I've got a lot of faith, incredible degree of saddha in this path, the path of the forest monks, the path of the Aryas, the path of the Buddha. So much faith that when I have an opportunity to serve the sasana, to serve the Sangha, it does bring me so much joy and happiness. It's all I want to do in my life. And I never look upon it as a burden, but as a source of inspiration. And it makes my body feel so light. When the Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree, he had that sense of inspiration, not the sense of heaviness, of trying to control his spiritual practice, either through forcing it and creating this terrible tension and harshness to the body. Nor did he do that through just indulging in the world, but this beautiful middle way of just letting go of the world with a sense of happiness and joy. To able to let go of the world, you have to do it with a sense of happiness and joy, with a sense of ease. I keep on telling people that before the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, he had a good bath. He had a very beautiful meal. Not just an ordinary meal, but a meal which was prepared for devas. And he gathered some grass in order to sit under the Bodhi tree. He didn't just sit on the bare ground, with this root poking into his flesh, but made it lovely and comfortable, and under the shade of a tree rather than out in the sun. And this degree of comfort was done in order that his body could be able to disappear, and let him focus on the mind, and focus on the inspiration and joy in the mind. That's why in the Mahasatchika Sutta, you've got the beautiful phrases which I'm really surprised that not more people mention this. That the Buddha, when he remembered his time under the rose apple tree as a young man, as a young boy, remembered that and thought, could this be the path to enlightenment, the path to Bodhi? And then the insight arose in him. Yes, this is the path to enlightenment. That's what insight means. That's a real insight which happened to the Buddha. The insight that jhana was the way to Bodhi. And then he said, why am I afraid of that happiness? He said, I will not be afraid of that happiness. And with that insight and with that resolution, the path was clear for him to gain this beautiful enlightenment on the full moon day or night of May in Bodh Gaya. And sometimes that we think that the pleasures of meditation we can become attached to, or they're dangerous, or sometimes that we think we don't deserve them. There's that sense of ill will towards ourselves, or towards the meditation or whatever. Be careful of this. Why don't you want to be happy? Why don't you want to just allow the mind to stop? A lot of times because we're afraid we might disappear. We're afraid of letting go. Those are attachments to the self. But it's a strange thing that the attachments to the self cannot be given up by a sense of will. You can't choose to let go. And the reason is because it's the self trying to let go of the self. It just cannot be done. All one can do, and this is the path towards enlightenment, is to have so much peace that gives so much bliss that the degree of bliss just overpowers all fear of letting go. It's just so wonderful. You don't care about if your self or soul gets disintegrated. It's just so blissful, so wonderful. You don't care if samsara ends and you become enlightened, you don't come back again. It's the power of that happiness, which is a powerful force which pushes you through into deeper states of peace and deeper states of insight. In just the same way that people are afraid of the power and the bliss of jhanas, so they're afraid of giving up their attachments. They're afraid of abandoning the fetters. I'm not talking about a conscious fear. I'm talking about a deeply embedded fear, because someone knows if you let go of those fetters that you are going to disappear and fade away. We want to be in control. It's that happiness which overcomes that fear of losing the sense of self. That's why the middle way was so important, to be able to generate that degree of happiness, that degree of piti and sukha, which would get so strong, it would almost trick the mind to be able to let go of its attachment to self. It would be able to overcome the fear of not seeing the truth of anatta. You cannot just contemplate anatta without joy in the mind. Because if you contemplate anatta with a sense of even equanimity, let alone with a sense of ill will or not feeling all that happy today, that all you get is just a lot of thinking and a lot of confusion. The contemplation of anatta is a contemplation of all of these very powerful truths which we don't want to see. It has to be done from this place of joy and happiness, of energy and inspiration. That's why it was sometimes that when the Buddha was giving these discourses, he would inspire people so much, give them so much happiness and bliss while they were listening to a talk, that he could put in a few of these powerful teachings which normally they would not even entertain the possibility of. Dukkha. They'd be so blissed out that instead of being repulsed by dukkha, they'd be delighted by dukkha, by the cause of dukkha, by the end of dukkha, by the path. Because of the happiness when the 5 hindrances were overcome, they could actually see what they normally would not be able to see. The fear of those insights was overcome by the sheer joy of it. So because of the need for that happiness, that ease, that inspiration, to be able to get this process of piti, passaddhi, sukha, samadhi, and yathabhuta yanadasana going, we have to get a sense of ease in our body. And that's why that I've been trying for the last 5 years or 6 years or even longer to try and make this monastery comfortable enough. Comfortable enough in the sense that it is a middle way. There's no austerity here. But of course, it's really up to you to use the facilities which you have here. However, when you have these facilities here, don't forget the path of inspiration. It's beautiful to be able to do chanting in one's hut. To chant to the Buddha, chant to the Dhamma, chant to the Sangha. And by so doing, you are doing Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, the reflection of these beautiful jewels, which we call the triple gem. And to allow the mind to linger on the qualities of the Buddha, especially on Wesak night. And all of the suttas you've read, all of the talks you've heard about the Buddha, to allow your mind to linger on those in the same way that you would linger on a beautiful piece of food, delighting in it, just tasting every morsel of the beautiful reflection of the Buddha, delighting, becoming inspired, until it does start the process which leads to Nibbana, or on the Dhamma, on those teachings which you've heard, which have meant so much to you, which have released so much suffering and given you a light at the end of this very dark tunnel of samsara, to be able to see, yes, there is something more than just this getting born, doing what everyone else is doing, getting old and getting sick and dying. It's beautiful being a senior monk, because when someone dies you go to visit them, and people ring you up because they're upset that their husband's dying, or when the kids misbehave. As a monk, as senior monk, you see so much dukkha in the world. And it's with everybody. You have no illusions about this world. However, sometimes as a young monk, sometimes you may even think that it's different, or you'll make it different. Don't think that you're any different than anybody else in this world. That you too are subject to old age, sickness, and death at any time. If you go out there in the world and try playing around with relationships, with work, with having families, just go and talk to some of the other monks in this monastery who've had wives, children, work. See what it's really like. And don't be stupid if you are in this beautiful monastery, don't go jumping into the cesspit. You're just stupid to do so. But by reflecting on the beautiful dhammas of the Buddha, the teachings which really inspire you, that this is a path to Nibbana. And I don't know how far you've walked on it, but some of you have walked long enough on this path to be able to have experienced some of the beautiful fruits of this path. And these are fruits which you can't find in the world, which are far more delicious than falling in love, or winning the lotto, or getting seeing your first child born. None of that can match the happinesses and the releases of the spiritual life. These are beautiful things which wait for you. And if you can have that degree of confidence and faith that there's beautiful bliss states right in front of you, if you carry on with this path, it'll give you the inspiration. This is Dhamma, this is truth, this is a teaching of the Buddha. The Buddha taught that if you practice the Eightfold Path, this is where it leads. This is a path. In other words, follow the instructions and those are the results, the cause and effect teaching of Buddhism. You just put all the causes in place and this happens. And certainly in my years as a monk, I've tried those causes and they do work. You do get these beautiful states. And other teachers have told you that. Other great monks, you've seen those, and you can be like that great monk if you really just follow the practice and follow the teachings. And that gives you inspiration. It gives you inspiration not just in the Dhamma, but inspiration in the Sangha. You think of great monks or nuns you've known, and that just makes the mind go all soft and joyful and blissful and beautiful. It's reflecting on the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. And just reflect on how many people have become enlightened over 25 centuries since the Buddha's enlightenment. Just untold numbers of beings have become stream winners, once returners, non-returners and arahats. And each one of those beings was no different in essence than yourself. Many of those beings had trouble with their defilements, with their lust, or with their anger, or with their stupidity. And when you read some of the teachings in the Tipitaka, read some of the stories of some of the monks, some of these monks were so stupid, but they became enlightened. They were just so indulgent, so pampered, but then they made it. And it's very inspiring just to see the cross-section of people who eventually became arahats in the world. And that's not just in the time of the Buddha, just all the time since. Some of the forest teachers you've seen, who are highly attained monks, coming from all different backgrounds. Some who are jokers, some who are stupid at school, some who are very aggressive, like Ajahn Brahm. And all of these people could release themselves from their defilements and become arahats. It was amazing to see. And it gave you this tremendous faith and confidence and hope that just as they could do it, so could you. And as I keep saying, that each one of you in this monastery, even those who are just visiting this monastery just for the evening, have got everything it takes to become fully enlightened. Just be patient. Just keep on protecting the practice, like growing the tree. You all remember when Ajahn Tui was here, that's all he used to say to most people. Just keep on protecting the tree, keep watering it, and it will grow, and the fruits will come in due course. If you had a tree, wouldn't you have faith that as long as you knew the soil was good, as long as you keep protecting it and make sure it was well watered and got sun and the kangaroos didn't eat it, you'd know that one day it will grow into a big tree. You'd know that one day it will give fruit. That's why Ajahn Tamla has brought all these trees to plant, because he knows that they'll grow into beautiful big trees one day. He's got faith that will happen. It would be wonderful if you had that same degree of faith which Ajahn Brahm has in his trees with the Eightfold Path. Just keep at it. Keep watering it. Keep guarding it. And you know that one day it has to go into this huge, beautiful tree of enlightenment, and the fruits will just fall by themselves. And it's amazing if that happens to you, when that happens to you, not if, sorry. And then you get this even incredible faith that this is a path which is open to everybody, not just special people. It's a path which is open to each one of you. And I guarantee this, if you keep on going, that all these fruits of the holy life will just come. And you get blissed out, and you have so much joy and so much happiness and so much gratitude to your teachers. And it'll be just so much of a blessing to the world. Because then you'll come up on a Dharma seat and you'll say the same things which I'm saying now. It's possible, you can attain to these things. Just have that inspiration, that degree of faith, and reflect upon all these other monks. It's lovely getting to know some of these famous monks. They're just, in one sense, they're just ordinary human beings. They're just ordinary human beings who've just kept up the practice and followed the instructions and done it properly instead of goofing off. And when they haven't goofed off and they followed the practice, these things happen as a natural course. It's beautiful to see, and such a wonderful blessing for the world. There's nothing like just being next to an enlightened person and just hanging out with them. That's why people used to hang out with Ajahn Chah all times of the night. You didn't feel like going to bed when you were around such a person. It just doesn't matter what he was talking about. There was some inspiration there to see the teachings in flesh. And this is what happens when one practices. But reflect on the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. It gives you that inspiration, that happiness, that joy. Reflecting on the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha is much better than reading stupid books or listening to the radio or watching television or doing all these other things. Because all those things do, they just tie you down into the world. They create all this bad karma. And they just make the body and mind heavy. They don't give inspiration. But if you have the inspiration of the Dhamma, it just makes the mind just so blissful. It's only 3 weeks ago when I finished the 9-day retreats down at North Perth. It was such a blissful 9 days. Just doing nothing but meditating and teaching the Dhamma or talking to other people about their meditation. I think I said at the time, I could do that forever. Just one 9-day retreat after another 9-day retreat. Have a 900-day retreat, a 9,000-day retreat. That would be great. Please, someone organise it and I'll teach it. What this means, it just inspires you to do these things. It's the same with on Monday when I go to Malaysia and Singapore. I get so much inspiration from just teaching and just doing a lot of meditation myself. It's no burden at all. For me, it's like a holiday. It's bliss. Going off teaching meditation somewhere. And this is what can be in front of you. Have bliss holidays for 3 weeks. Just going teaching meditation and teaching Dhamma. What a wonderful thing it is. What's this good karma? This is wholesome. And because it's so wholesome karma, teaching Dhamma to others, and just practicing meditation, of course it's going to give you so much energy, so much joy, so much wholesome, niramisa sukha. Not the happiness of the world. You're not doing this to get accolades or to get money. You're doing it just for the sheer fun of it. And that's why the last time I came back here, even though I've been, I don't know how many talks I gave, and I think about an average of 2 talks a day, about 40 talks in 20 days or something. I forget what it was. But I just came back blissed out. Just so happy. Full of energy. And this is what happens. This is good karma, that's all. And this is part of the preparation before you sit under a Bodhi tree. Reflecting on the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. is giving that happiness in the mind, that inspiration, that pamuja. This is in the usual sequence, which gives rise to the piti in the mind, the inspiration in the mind. So that's the first teaching of the middle way, is to start this process off. And once the process starts, don't get in the way and just mess it up. That's why all the teachings which I've been given over the last few years are always about just allow the process to happen. You just stand back and watch. Now you're just the observer, not the doer, not the driver, not the manipulator. Just do some more letting go when you meditate. And just do more perception of the beautiful when you meditate. Because that perception of the beautiful is just another way of encouraging the process to begin. The perception of the beautiful is just turning the mind to see where the piti is, where the sukha is, just generating this process in a more fast way. And it's not that hard to see the beauty in the monastery, or the beauty in your fellow monks, or the beauty in what you have to do. And certainly that's been my practice for so many years. When you had to work, you see the beauty in doing the work, the great service to the Sangha. When you didn't have to work and you're on retreat, the great beauty of just being able to sit meditation for 2 weeks in your hut with no one bothering you. When someone put food in your bowl, just great beauty that you didn't have to worry about what you're going to eat. When you can put food in your own bowl, the great beauty in being able just to choose whatever you want. Whatever you do, you just see the beautiful side of it. You have to go and give a talk in Olamala, see the beautiful side of that. You have to go to see someone dying, what a wonderful service it is to somebody else, to be with them in the last few moments and help them through that transition of death. It's a beautiful opportunity. I'm just so honoured and privileged to be able to do that. And on Saturday I'm going to the opening of a Sri Lankan temple in Kenwick. I'm just delighted to be invited to be able to go there, be able to participate. Another Buddhist temple in Perth. Great. Should have one on every street corner. Just like there's all these Bunnings stores, and we should have a franchise. A Buddhist monastery on every street corner. And if we can, it gives me so much happiness to do that. And I could look upon it as a burden. I don't want to do this. Why should I do that? Someone else can do this. Be careful of that fault-finding mind. That's something you learn very early on in my monastic career. To see that critical mind. Why me? Why do I always have to do this? Why does the abbot always get me to wash the robes? I remember one story which was quite moving. There was an Australian monk who disrobed since. Sutiro, his name was. He was from Brisbane. And Ajahn Brahm was the abbot of this time, about 3 years into the start of Wat Nana chart. And Ajahn Brahm used to have lots of robes, and big ones too, because he was a huge fellow. And just one morning, after meditating all night on the mood night, after arms round, we just finished our meal. So when we were all ready to go back and crash out, he gave all his robes to Sutiro, said, "Wash my robes." And Sutiro was fuming. He said, "I want to go and have a rest. Why do you always give the robes to me?" That's what he thought. Oh, obviously that he gave them to many monks, but he decided to give them to Sutiro this time. And I saw him at the bowl washing place afterwards. He was cursing, you know how Australians do. He forgot he was a monk. It was funny to see him, because I was just pottering around. And I just said a few words which I was just imitating from Ajahn Chah. I was saying it's the thinking about it is the hard part, not washing the robes. I must have really hit him, because he went quiet. And I went and had a rest, and he came up to me in the afternoon to thank me and said, "You were right. even though I hadn't slept all night. It was the thinking which was the problem, not the washing the robes. And he got a really beautiful insight there. And that's why he thanked me and bowed to me for giving that little lesson. And how much in our lives it's the thinking which causes the problem. Being asked to do things, or not asked to do things, or worrying about this and worrying about that. It's amazing just how much we believe our ideas and our thoughts. And it's just like, if you are going to believe any ideas, believe any thoughts, believe the beautiful ones, and just chuck out the ugly ones. Because that gives you the super sanya, the perception of the beautiful. And that perception of the beautiful will create the happiness in the mind, which will start this whole process going. And when you meditate and you're happy, you get beautiful meditation. That's how it works. So don't be so critical. If you are critical of the monastery, of me, of others, you've got snowball's chance in hell of getting deep meditation. Simply because the mind hasn't developed the super sanya. You're just lost the middle way. You're going into austerity, ill will, fault finding. Develop the lightness of the mind, the non-judgmental type of mind, the happy mind. And then if you can develop that super sanya in whatever you're asked to do here, whatever food you have given to eat, whatever hut you're staying in, whatever robes you have, it's good enough. In fact, it's beautiful to have rag robes. It's beautiful to have just this old robe, which is, well past its time. Or if you get a new robe, it's beautiful to have a new robe, whatever the storekeeper gives you. Instead of asking for a special type of robe, just storm and give me a robe, whatever's my size, it will do. Thank you very much. You feel so grateful for having a robe. So grateful for having a bowl. So grateful for having a kuti, where you can be by yourself and practice meditation. Even if it hasn't got a walking meditation path attached with a roof over it, just so grateful to have a length of sand where no one bothers you and you can just walk backwards and forwards, just protected from the demands of the world. It's so wonderful just to have the opportunity today just to walk meditation, have a body which allows me to do that. That super sanya, that sense of gratitude, that sense of acceptance and joy in the moment is what produces contentment, which produces stillness, which produces all these beautiful samadhi states from which you can see the stupidity of desires and judgments and criticizing and fault-finding. It's so stupid to have all this fault-finding mind. Who does it really affect? You. Wherever you find fault, you go somewhere else and you find fault again. You don't like this person, you won't like the next person either, because the fault is in your mind, not in the place. And you can't meditate either, because the reason why people can't get peaceful in the meditation is because they run away from the present moment. They're afraid of it. They run away from silence. They can't stand it. And they just run away from the breath because they can't control it. All these things are based on fear. Fear of letting go. If you're a control freak, you're very fault-finding. That's what control freaks are. You find fault, so they want to control it. People who don't control can allow things to be. They can actually see the beauty in things. They can leave it alone. It's good enough. They're trying to control all the time. Manipulate it, make it this way, make it that way. They just work with whatever comes their way. They can lessen their craving. They can untie their attachments. They can have much more freedom. So by developing the opposite of the fault-finding mind, the grateful mind, the mind which can see the beauty in things, you can go and live anywhere. But because I was ordained in a village monastery in Bangkok, in Wat Saket, where people would not keep all the rules. I remember just staying there, just the first, after a year I'd been away, and I went down there with another monk to do our visas. Then he went to the toilet and he came running back, and he said, "You wouldn't believe what I saw. I looked through the window over the courtyard into another monk's room, and I saw a woman start to undress." And that's where I ordained as a monk. I don't know if it was true or not. It was so many years ago. But even so, that some of those monks were just so kind to me in my early years. And I owed them so much for just the first couple of weeks, just encouraging me and providing the place where I could enter the monastic life. And so I still got a lot of respect for that place, even though some of the monks might not be perfect, maybe far from perfect. I just can't get that fault-finding mind going. Now, even if there are real faults there, which you should really, as a monk, not tolerate, it's because of my respect and the happy time I had there in the first few months of my monastic life. Those 3 places you're supposed to revere for the rest of your life in the Anguttara Threes. The first is the place where you went forth as a novice. The place where you left behind the white robes of the householder and put on the brown robes as a family of the Buddha, as a Sakyaputta. The second place is where you became a stream winner. Third place is where you became an Arahant. But each one of you wearing brown has got one place to revere for the rest of your life. That's what the Buddha said. That's Buddha's teachings. If you don't do that, you don't understand what the Buddha was talking about. No gratitude, fault-finding. And so by developing that sense of gratitude to the place where I was ordained, fortunately I found Ajahn Chah's monastery about a month after I became a monk. So I was very fortunate there to be able to get a very good training and get even more inspiration. But those monks were so kind that I just thanked them for their kindness rather than criticize them for their lax discipline. And that's been my character. Because of that character, it's been easy to meditate. My old body, sometimes I've got a bad back or a sore throat or this ache or that ache. It doesn't matter, body. You're not sort of perfect, but I can work with you. I'm not going to be fault-finding with you. My old kuti, sometimes I get comfortable in one side of that hut and people move me to the next. I don't know which side I'll be in when I come back from Malaysia. But I don't care. I was just pointing out to some visitors today the old water tank hut where I used to stay. I had some really nice times in that. And that's why, just an indulgence, a personal indulgence. I don't want anyone to throw that old water tank away. It's my first hut in this monastery. Actually, I was thinking today it was only a few sleepers, an old second-hand window and door, actually to recreate it. My little museum. It wouldn't take more than a couple of afternoons to make. And show actually how I lived, and even actually put the water in the floor like it used to be, and the duckboards. It was good fun. And Ajahn Jacko came there once, and he couldn't believe I could stand the smell. Because when Jara gets wet, it has this really strong smell. I was quite happy in there. It was the first hut I had in this monastery. I'm so grateful for it. And that sort of sense of happiness with whatever you've got, whatever you comes along, is so important when you meditate. It's the middle way. It creates the grounds for deep meditation. So when you start meditating, see if you can develop gratitude as the beginning of your meditation. So grateful for your cushion to support your bottom. So grateful for the hut in which you're sitting or the hall in which you're sitting. So grateful for the all the monks who've gone before, who've made it possible for you to be a monk, all the people who built this hall, all the lay people, the donors who worked hard and donated for this hall, the Buddhist Society, all these people which made it possible just for you to be here and sit. Thank you so much. Just my debt to you is enormous. And it brings this beautiful sense of softness to the mind and piety to the mind. And it's easy to meditate then. It's easy just to be silent. It's easy to watch the breath. And as you get into this, indulge in that Niramisa Sukha, the happiness, as much as you like. Bliss out as much as you like. Blissing out on these things is just much more delectable than even the best coffee served at the kitchen. You can really have fun with these things, and this is the fun of monastic life. It's there for you, and it leads to the attainments of Nibbana. This is not indulging in the five senses, it's indulging in the very wholesome, beautiful qualities of the spiritual, the holy life. It creates a foundation for deep meditation. If you can create the foundation, and all your difficulties and problems in meditation will all just disappear. You sit there, and if you want to watch the breath, it just comes, and you're just so happy just to watch the breath. You're not so fault-finding and just, breath's not good enough, I'm not good enough, this is not good enough, what am I doing this for? Just all those things which create restlessness are overcome. That's the cause of restlessness, the fault-finding mind. Now just giving all these ways of overcoming that hindrance. Developing joy, developing gratitude, developing the mind which has the supasañña, the perception of the beautiful, reflecting on all of the arahats, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. It just brings so much happiness and enjoyment to your mind. And this is so much better than anything you can find in the world. The best symphony by Beethoven can't beat the reflection on the Buddha, the Dhamma or the Sangha. And so this becomes your abiding. This becomes your hit to really make the mind happy. And then just the whole of monastic life becomes such an easy way of living, such a sensible way of living, such a beautiful way of living. You get so high and so joyful. That was some visitors from Malaysia were coming the other day. And we were talking about just why you're a monk, why you're giving up all these pleasures for. And I just really blasted them and said, look, who's happier, me or you? And they had to admit that I was happier. I smiled much deeper than they did. And I just won that point. And I did that because I was just imitating, not to the same extent, because you can't imitate the Buddha. That's what the Buddha did in the Samanyapala Sutta. When this great king, Ajatasattu, came in and said, what the hell are you doing being monks for? Why don't you go and enjoy the world? And the Buddha said, these are the joys of monastic life. And just the joys of monastic life, is talking to King Ajatasattu, are even more delectable than the joys and the happiness of a king. This is what happens. And when you can get into that joy of monastic life, of the beautiful Niramisa Sukhas in the world, you get to know the middle way. The middle way is a very delicious way, full of happiness. It's a real way of happiness. The middle way is not a sort of a dull way, not a miserable way, not a grumpy way. That's why when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, he would have smiled. In fact, after his enlightenment, he smiled for 7 days at a time. He just couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop blissing out. And all the monks who came afterwards just couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop blissing out. These are the monks who followed the instructions, that is. They bliss out and they see there is no self in there. Ah, what a great relief. All of you are worried about yourself. Think you're not good enough. Isn't it wonderful to find out there's no one in here? I don't have to do anything, 'cause there's no one in here to do things. People can criticize me and say I'm a fool. Who's a fool? I can't see anyone in here who's even wise, let alone a fool. And just all of that praise and blame. Would it be wonderful to be able to undermine all of that, so you don't care a hoot what other people say about you? You know, there's no one to say anything about anyway. This is a process which goes along. You don't feel guilty, you don't feel proud, because it's just a process. There's no one in here. It's a great relief. It's the biggest relief in the world to find you don't exist. Oh, wow, that solves all your problems. No matter what problems you have, this is the solution. Find out there's no one in here. So this is actually a path of joy. When a person gets insight, they never go and sit down crying their eyes out. They just go out blissed out with a stupid smile on their face for weeks on end. They're just so happy. And that's been going on for 25 centuries. People blissing out on the insights, blissing out and seeing the truth, blissing out and seeing that the samsara is ending for them, seeing the noble truths, seeing the whole practice grow and grow and grow, and seeing the fruits developing on the tree and seeing them fall and eating those fruits, just the most delicious fruits, as the fruits of the path. And when you can see this and do this, it just brings you so much happiness. It's just such a wonderful path. And the Buddha started it all off 2588 years ago, when he sat under the Bodhi tree. 2588 years ago, sat under the Bodhi tree. And he was as stupid as you when he started. When he came out afterwards, he was complete arahat, seeing the truth, seeing the secret of happiness, blissed out, free, liberated. Gave all this beautiful teaching for other people. So this is available to you. Don't waste the opportunity. In fact, you can't waste the opportunity. Just allow this thing to happen. Just hang in there. Keep practicing the path. Give up all of your stupidities. Make your practice